Darlene Gait. I'm from Esquimalt Nation. Esquimalt Nation and Songhees Nation were the original people of Victoria. It was very important that we understand the language where we come from, because the language is the culture. And the language, unfortunately, is what they call sleeping, because there's only 3 people that speak it fluently, and our first language is Lakwangan. And it's different than Halkaminam. It's very strangely spelled. And I'm just recently taking the language class, and it's very, very difficult to learn. I'm sure your language is difficult to learn too.
Yes. There's very few speakers as well.
Exactly. Passed away when my mom was 3, so she was raised on the Sartla Preserve.
Okay.
And the Cooper family raised her and her brother. And so my grandmother Cooper, pretty much, she taught me quite a bit. It was interesting, when I was born, she named me. And she really, I felt a very close affinity to her growing up. And she was a medicine woman, and a lot of people relied on her for, people. She would get paid to do certain things spiritually. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if I want to explain it on camera.
Okay, I understand.
It's kind of a private thing. Yeah. But she really believed when I was a child that I would go into the arts, and she could see that my hands were different. I was a brat when I was a kid. I was a total horrible child. I asked questions about everything. I wanted to understand, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? It was just terrible. And she had the patience to understand me. I remember she had a wooden leg. She used to take candies out of her wooden leg. She was a strange old lady. I loved her. Yeah, so culturally she taught me quite a bit. And she passed away when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I felt that connection to my culture disappear after she died. Because, having the elders are very important, right? So that was my bridge. And my mother became a status again when she was allowed to get her status in the 80s, because she married a non-native man, Scottish and English. And he loved, my father just loved native people, just so humble. It was like he was one of us. I'm saying one of us. Half of him, but he used to get upset. He'd say, you're half white too, and I never acknowledged that. It's so strange. I never acknowledged being white in all of my life. He was very spiritual in the Celtic sense, where he understood the force of the earth. Like, he was very connected to the earth, my dad. He was a gardener. He grew all of our food that we ate when we grew up, and we never ate chemical stuff or anything like that when we were kids, so we were all very, very healthy. And I didn't grow up on the reserve, but we were very closely connected to the Esquimalt Nation because my mom's sister and brother were there. So we were always visiting all the time, and I knew my relatives, and I knew my nation. Like, I knew who I was. I knew that's my native people, and growing up I had this feeling in my heart, like, what am I going to do to help my people? I was always thinking that, what am I going to do to help my people? I knew, but I never really knew what to do. So I just thought, maybe in my art. The old ways of our nation, and I can't recall the correct language of saying for each house, but there was 3 houses, and one house was ran by a woman who was a spiritual woman. She was very, very intuitive, and she taught the people the spiritual way. She taught one person who was the speaker for all of those 3 houses that spoke to all the nations, or to the people. So we had one speaker that learned from the 3 houses, and of those 3 houses, 2 of the houses were women. So there was no issue of women and men being equal. Women were treated with just as much respect back in the day. And it's kind of nice to have a religion or a faith in my life that understands that importance. So I'm feeling like this is a pretty good thing. My feelings of when I came to understand about the faith being the same teachings as my traditional ways, I didn't know what that meant. I thought, okay, well, it's not the same. It comes from Iran. It's Persian. The origins are Persian. How can it be the same, right? But when you start to look at the teachings, then you realize after years of, well, might not be the same for you. It might be 6 months you study and you get it. But for me, I'm slow. It took me a long time. I was very stubborn. And I realized, okay, yeah, it is. It's close. It's pretty much the same values, the same everything. You know, the elders are trying to say, minus all the backbiting and the stuff that's going on, and the negative stuff that's happening within our culture right now doesn't help. You know, I think a lot of that is because there needs to be a lot of healing that takes place. You committed to the vision of becoming a Baha'i and a native Baha'i. It was so profound, and so many beautiful blessings came into my life when I became a Baha'i, a native Baha'i. My communities looked at me with suspicion at first, because they wondered, what the heck? You know, what is this, another Christian thing, or another Catholic thing, or another one of those religions? But it wasn't, and it's only been recently that my native communities come to see that there is nothing to fear, and it's a faith that allows me to still be in my culture. It doesn't deny me access to my culture. It actually makes me more culturally knowledgeable by becoming a Baha'i. So people are starting to see that now, and it took 8 years to get to that point of serving my people and doing what I needed to do to help people understand who I am. And I never tried to push it on anyone else. It's just a personal choice that you have to come to in your life. Many native people have visions and eventually become Baha'is, and that's how they come to this faith. It's through dreams and through meditation. It's not through force, and it's not through the way that the religion was taught to them of Christianity. It's not like that. So it's way more spiritual than that. And so you treat it with respect once you have it, once you learn of it. And through that, my mother became one too last year. It took her 7 years to understand the meaning of it, but she did. She declared. So I don't know what her reason was for declaring. Maybe one day she'll tell me. I learned of the Baha'i faith through a dream and through meditation, and then eventually I met the person that I dreamed of, and that's how I became one, and then I declared. So it was actually through my culture, my native culture, that led me to the dream, which led me to the faith. So it's all kind of, again, interconnected. And it wasn't until I found out about the faith that I realized that there was a lot of prophecies about our people in this faith, and it's very powerful. So it's kind of what held me to learn more and more about it. One of the prophecies from Shoghi Effendi is that when native people become enlightened and they learn of the teachings of Baha'u'llah, that the whole world will turn to them to teach them about what spirituality really is. And I think the combination of our culture and the spiritual beliefs of the Baha'i faith is a powerhouse. And it eliminates when the Baha'i faith comes into play culturally with our heritage, it eliminates the superstition, and it shows the proof of the Creator. And it makes people aware that it's not about being a single teacher. It's about all of us turning to the Creator, and not just a one person or a priest or a teacher or a healer. It's all of us turning directly to God and making us understand that there is not one person that's more spiritual or more powerful. We all have our own special, unique gifts, because we're all born perfect, because the Creator made each one of us individually perfect. So I think that in itself is really important for First People to understand, because there's so much healing that needs to take place from the last couple hundred years of all of what's taken place in the past with our elders who are still healing from that. And you see the residual effects of it on the youth who are forming gangs and becoming violent. This is the backlash of what's happened in the past. This is showing in our youth. So the Baha'i faith actually comes in, and it gives a layer of peace and hope to our people, and it makes the heart of the person a little bit more connected to the Creator. So I think if our people want to survive culturally, which we're losing our culture too, and spiritually, we need to find something. And this is the anchor that's going to keep us from, I don't know, that's just my feeling. We're almost going nowhere, you know, with the way it is. It just doesn't feel that culture is enough anymore. You know, how many times can you get thrown in the big house if you're drinking? You get thrown in the big house for 3 months, and then you become a dancer. And then, you know, sometimes you get grabbed again. The next year you're not. You know what I mean? How many times?
Yeah.
What is it that we need? I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish someone would help me.
I know.
I feel so alone. I felt like I was the only native Baha'i in the world sometimes. You know, they always want the token native person to come along and speak on behalf of all the natives of Canada. No, I'm sorry, but there's moments that I feel really overwhelmed. Because there's not a lot of First Nations people who have come to understand the importance of their spiritual aspect of our culture that needs to be revived. And once they do, it's nice to be around Native women, especially Native Baha'i women, because they know we all get what we're doing, like the responsibility of teaching the youth and overcoming our grudges that we have in our hearts towards non-Native people. Like, that's a biggie, you know, like when we can do it, anyone can do it, because we're the mothers. You know, the mothers are the women are the powerhouse in our nation. We're the ones responsible for teaching our children and our grandchildren. So once you have a woman who can understand the importance of this spiritual food, then we're able to feed it to our people. And I'm telling you, as a Native Baha'i, it's lonely being the only nation, the only woman on my reserve, besides my mother now, which is really nice. She's just starting to learn about the power of the writings, and she's doing really good. But it's nice to be around other First Nations women who are Baha'is, because then it doesn't make me feel like I'm so alone. It's all the nations of the world. Like, when you think of Baha'is, you think of multicultural. There's not one nationality. It's every nation of the world, because it's the underlying belief of what it means to be a Baha'i is you believe in unity, you believe in the elimination of racism, and you believe in the equality of men and women. So those three things are what it means. If you don't believe in those things, you're not a Baha'i. If you don't believe that women and men should be equal, well, go back to being something else. But I think it's important that we're equal. Yeah. Even with or without the faith, I think it's important. And just those very principles are something that I want my children to know. You would have seen a different woman sitting in front of you. I was very quiet, very shy, not able to voice my opinion, sitting in the background, almost disappearing, never ever speaking out. But now, since I've declared and became a Baha'i, my voice just rocks. You know, I don't have any barriers anymore. I'm not ashamed of myself anymore. I mean, all that racism that I grew up with in school, being one of the minorities, and protecting my family from it, from my sister and brothers or whatever, that was really, really hard. And I don't know. So yeah, 8 years ago, I wasn't the same person that I am today. This is the transformation that takes place, though, in a Native Baha'i woman. They become a powerhouse, and I feel myself becoming that. And I don't really know where it's going. I just feel like I'm being moved along by this big hand. I've discovered through the faith there's routes that you're supposed to use. There's a book called Some Answered Questions. You know, it's really interesting. It's like 1,000 or more questions answered on how you handle certain situations. And when you go, when you're saying, how do I do this? How do I help people to help me? You know, look, and you read it up. And it tells you, Baha'u'llah will advise you, or after Baha will give you a little writing on how you can, and you do it, and then you watch it happen and unfold in front of you. You're like, oh my God, this is so incredible. No one told me this all these years. When you become a Baha'i, you become very familiar with a person's energy. You start to read energy, you start to pay attention to how that person's feeling, and you become aware of your surroundings and how people will respond, or what is it that they need. Is it really about what you need? Is it really something that you're trying to force upon someone, or is there another way, that's another door that you can go through? And it's not a manipulation tactic by any means.
Motive or intent? More? Like for motivating to help other people instead of motivating to help yourself, kind of?
It is. It's more like, what is the purpose of your idea? Is it self-perpetuating? It became pretty clear when I became a Baha'i what my purpose was. It was all kind of there. There you go, Darlene. You know what you need to do.